What's up, everybody? So this might get a little ranty. I don't know. Um, just wanted to put my 2 cents out onto the internet, uh, in person, so to speak, not behind a profile picture or you know that sort of stuff. Me, this is a person sitting here giving you my 2 cents on the current D&D situation with the open game license, the OGL. To preface, I'm pretty much your average player, or, in this case, a dungeon master. I'm not a creator. I have not put a lot of work into creating a world for sale, or any of that sort of stuff. So this is strictly coming from the point of view of someone who's actually fairly new to the hobby. I only started playing in 5th edition, uh, and have been enjoying it. So if you're not familiar, the open gaming license for background started, I guess, in 3rd edition. And if you're more familiar with computer terminology, the OGL basically, it's like open source software, like think of like Linux, right? Some portion of that source code is available for you to use to create your own version of Linux and turn around and sell that, as long as you also make your source code available, so on and so forth. So the OGL, similarly, through as it applies to D&D, means that Wizards of the Coast has put forth some portion of the core rules that other folks could use royalty free for the purposes of creating their own TTRPG, or from what I've seen so far, has allowed them to create their own worlds, basically, campaign guides, and that sort of stuff, and sell those. And that has led to, I think, quite a bit of success for some folks, particularly now in the days of having Kickstarter and other sorts of like crowdfunding, and it's easier to get those things out there. So they become more well known and they become popular, and they might make a good amount of money. The OGL has been the way it is so now for like 20 years, well, going on 23 years, because it came out, as I understand it, in 2000. Now, in 4th edition, they sort of moved away from the OGL. They had the GSL, which upset a lot of folks. That's one of the reasons why 4th edition was not popular. And the original OGL was only like one page, about, I think like 90 words or something like that. Not a lot. Very small, very clear and succinct. Says, here's what you can use. Go ahead and make your stuff. You don't owe us anything. Have fun. So that gave you the license to be able to. So, and also, to be clear, you can't copyright rules in concept. You can't copyright rolling a d20 to determine an outcome. The terminology that you apply to that, you can copyright, which Wizards of the Coast did, and then made that available for people to use in the OGL, as well as the names of some of their more specific races outside of dwarves, elves, and general fantasy. So here recently, with the new edition of D&D on the horizon, they have said they're going to be releasing an updated version of the OGL. It's currently 1.0A, which I'm not sure what revision A specifically introduced to the OGL, but still it has been generally the same for going on 23 years. Also, quick side note, when the GSL happened, people could still use, I believe, the OGL, because that was part of the OGL said that if a new version of this comes out, you don't like it, you can still use the old version and still produce the content that was made available with that version. No problem. So here we are today, and version 1.1 is on the horizon. It has not been released officially by Wizards of the Coast, but it seems from some very reliable sources that a draft copy, maybe, who knows, or at least that's probably what they're going to say when we get an official response. But a copy has found its way online. It has circulated in the community. It's quite a bit longer. I think it's something like 20 pages now, and it's like 9,000 words. Uh, it's it reads very much like a contract. That, in short, basically says that you could do all the things that you could do with the OGL. However, and I guess in light of this day and age where you have Kickstarters and the like, been great success, they've stipulated that if you make over 50K, over $50,000 on whatever your project is, you must begin reporting your revenue to Wizards of the Coast. And then, if you find great success and make over $750,000, you would then begin owing Wizards of the Coast a percentage, which I think they were going with something like 20 or 25%. I believe Kickstarter had officially confirmed that this version of the document was presented to them and that they were attempting to negotiate for like 20%. So let's start with this part in particular. My take. If any of you are familiar with video games, Epic Games has the Unreal Engine. You can use the Unreal Engine completely free of charge to make whatever you want. To model things in 3D, to make something interactive for education, to make your own video game, whatever. Knock yourself out. I would have to look at the specific terms of the Unreal Engine license agreement, but essentially, once you start making over a certain amount of money, I think it's something like 30,000. It's not high, in terms of, if you sell a product, nowhere near 750,000. If you make over a certain amount of money, Epic Games gets a piece of what you're selling. I don't remember off the top of my head what that is. I mean, it might be, I want to say it's like 15%. I think it's less than 25%. But at any rate, the concept is you make over a certain amount, using their engine, they get a piece. So, in that respect, especially since the OGL, as it stands, largely still exists as it was written in a time where the internet was still super brand new. Kickstarter didn't exist, social media didn't exist. The ability to broadcast yourself, to get your product out there and really be successful didn't exist when that was originally written. And I'm sure at that time, nobody thought that that was going to happen. So they had written this document from the perspective of people would mostly be having to advertise their product, in the traditional ways, be that through word of mouth or getting themselves, featured in a magazine article or that sort of thing. The likelihood that you were going to make tons and tons of money was a lot less. So for Wizards to update the document, uh, here, 23 years later, in light of the great success that people can now find in doing this and say, okay, once you start making over a certain amount of money, we feel that you owe us some of that. Honestly, that's, to me, that seems okay. I understand it's been, we've folks have been able to do it rent free for 23 years, but you know, I maybe it shouldn't be 25%. Maybe that needs to be negotiated down. Again, I'm not a creator. I don't know what goes into a person's pocket and that sort of stuff. So, um, but in general concept, I would say that's fair. Now, the other big thing though, uh, that I disagree with is there is a clause in this new open gaming license, and this is the part that really makes it not open, is that if you utilize this license and create a world, you know, let's say, you create an entire world, you lay out all the cities, the maps, you and your friends all get together, you make this whole campaign guide, came from your brain, you put it out there, you sell it. Even even though you might be giving Wizards of the Coast some of your money, or even if you're not, Wizards now claims ownership of that content. That part's bullshit, you know. Um, Now, if they wanted to come to you and say we would like to purchase this from you, or in the event that you're giving them money, that they could say something like, we will waive the royalties for you if you let us make this content official or something. Um, that might be a little better, but no, just to be able to say that, this thing that you've worked on for months or years of your life and now you've put out there, for them to just be like, thanks, this is ours now. No, that part's super bullshit. So, um, hopefully the final copy, whatever comes out, does not include that. Uh, I think what folks are hoping for is that they will just scrap it all together and just leave it at 1.0a. That seems to be the general consensus. Um, the other part that is also super shitty, I absolutely disagree with, is, and this one I would like to see if it holds up in a court of law, is that, as I had said, previous versions of the OGL included a little bit that said if you don't like a future revision, you can keep using an older revision with the content that was available for that revision. They seem to now be trying to revoke that entirely. They're trying to just completely nullify 1.0A and 1.0, and like, nope, you want to use OGL, you got to do 1.1, got to give us a cut, gotta, we own it, lock, stock, and barrel. Um, since the other version was, earlier versions were presented as a binding agreement, I'd love to see someone challenge that. But if I remember correctly, in a recent video with Jeremy Crawford, he was saying that, 1.0A would still be available for people who wanted to continue to create 5th edition content, that you would only need to agree to the new version if you were going to be working with 1D&D content. As I understand it, this leaked version doesn't read that way. Now, this is where I'm kind of like, okay, this has got to be an earlier version. This has got to be some kind of a draft, because it doesn't include that language. So I understand that people's livelihoods, because folks have put their eggs in the third party basket, I understand that people's livelihoods are on the line here. But I think folks need to calm down until we do get an actual official statement from Wizards of the Coast. And I think that the tendency on the internet these days, especially when it comes to dealing with any sort of corporate entity, is that everyone wants to bully them. I mean, I know it's a big company, it's a big corporate entity, so on and so forth. But from what I'm seeing, the responses on Twitter, to other social media, you guys are eating each other alive out there. You really are over this. And everybody just needs to, it's supposed to be the TTRPG community. And I'm seeing people flinging insults at each other, saying things like, well, you should stop playing D&D. Go play something else. Go play another system. Don't tell people what to play. I understand that you're angry, but these things take time. Sure, we can all put pressure on Wizards, but we can do it in a way that's not damaging to individuals. We can hurt the company's bottom line. Ultimately, I think it will. Ultimately, I think, because we've seen that Kobold Press announced just yesterday that essentially they're going to make their own version. And that leads me to this next part. You don't need the OGL. You never did. The only reason that you do need it is if you want to include, say, Dragonborn in your campaign. You want to be able to say Dragonborn, but you can call it something else and use different artwork, and boom, you're done. At least as I understand it. So I think what's going to happen, as I said, Kobold is doing, essentially, it sounds like their own version of D&D. They're calling it Project Black Flag. under what they're calling the Core Fantasy Tabletop rule set. So yeah, essentially we have another Pathfinder in the making. Um, which, I mean, that could be cool. So we'll see what they do. Um, yeah, but just everyone's being extremely hateful and angry with one another. Um, just everyone relax. I mean, I know that's hard to do, and I know it's scary because you're looking at the possibility that your company's going to go under. But getting on Twitter and bitching someone out about being a corporate shill, um, it's not going to save your company either. It really isn't. Um, so let's get out there. Let's all just focus. Let's wait for the official statement. When we do get it, if it's the nightmare scenario, we can place pressure. We can logically place pressure. We can support one another. We can continue to enjoy whatever we would like to enjoy gameplay wise. We can continue to support third parties with whatever they decide to make going forward. Um, and yeah, this ultimately, if other folks take up the banner that Cobalt is doing, if other folks join in their cause, and a lot of third party folks start making content for this core fantasy tabletop, then it's just going to blow up in Wizard's face. So think about that before you yell at the next rando on Twitter who says that their group likes to play D&D and that they will continue to do so. It's their money, you know. Just be kind to one another. That's the ultimate message here. Everyone be kind to one another, okay? All right, I'm going to get out of here and we'll catch you guys later.